Hi, everyone. It's Brenda back again with another episode of Three Uniques. Today, I have on Alex Brueckmann. Hi, Alex. How are you doing today?
Hey, Brenda, I'm doing great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. Yeah, just getting to know you over the last few weeks. Alex is a strategic entrepreneur. He lives in Canada, but he's also been scaling businesses in Europe and in Canada. And that's where his practice really, I think, evolves to. And then you're also the founder of an amazing summit, a leadership summit that's going to be coming up at the beginning of February this year called Legacy. And you've
Yes.
assembled all these amazing speakers and experts and coaches and practitioners. And you invited me to be in it. So I'm like really humbled that you selected me, especially when I see the lineup of all the great speakers that are there. And then you've come on my podcast today. So
Yay.
yeah, it's so awesome to
It's
have
just
you
so
here.
many opportunities to collaborate out there. Sometimes you
Yeah.
just have to find the good ones.
Exactly. And I think that is really like that's the important part about business that I've always learned is that you can try and like hunker down and do it yourself or, leverage and talk to other people and just,
Yeah.
bridge those barriers and those
Yeah.
boundaries. So talk to me a little bit more about your business, about Alex, like who are you just so that like our listeners get a good idea.
I think I started with a non-business part.
Okay.
I'm a dad to a 2-year-old, my first child,
Hmm.
and I'm like early mid 40s, so fairly old for a first-time dad.
Hmm.
But I think I'm very lucky to be that old already. I just experience it in a different way, I think. And if I remember myself like at 25, I wouldn't have had that maturity to really embrace that role as a father. So I
Right.
can deprioritize work, which I couldn't do when I was 25. I was so into work and into what I did that it would have not been as fulfilling for me as it is today.
Right.
And so I really am grateful that I, as an entrepreneur, can basically choose how much I work and
Hmm.
how much time I spend with my family. But beyond my son, yes, as you already said, I'm a strategy entrepreneur. What that means is I'm currently building a new business here in Canada. I moved here 2 years ago, right
Okay.
after my son was born. We moved from Germany to Canada. My wife is from Canada, and it's one hell of a ride to create something from scratch. It's not the first time, but
Hmm.
it's the first time with that knowledge that I have now,
Hmm.
based on 20 years in the industry. What I basically do is I take what I've learned over 20 years in the space of creating business strategies with large organizations and translate it into language and into systems and tools that work for founders, for small businesses, for entrepreneurs that run smaller companies, not the big global corporations and brands. And that has been one hell of a ride. I really enjoy what I do with my first clients here in Canada. But basically, it's a business that, like everything nowadays, works online.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. I loved how you said you're starting up your business now. Like you've started up businesses in the past, but there's like some new things, and you've got 20 years experience under your belt. Still, though, like are there things that sort of come up, like and this is sometimes questions I leave for more at the end of the podcast, but like things that you've had to like kind of learn or put in place or new habits around business, like as you're starting up this new platform, this new way of
You have
working.
no idea, Brenda. I spend every day so much time with learning new stuff because I'm like, what is that tool? Why do I need that? How does it work? How does it help me? I'm,
Yeah.
I'm literally spending at least 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day learning new things that I've never seen before,
Right.
because it's the first time that I'm actually building a business that is entirely made for the online world.
Hmm.
My businesses before were face-to-face businesses. They were strategy consulting companies, basically, and they often work by showing up at a
Hmm.
client side. But
Hmm.
now I'm not consulting that much anymore. I still do that and I still enjoy it, and it keeps me sane, I guess. It's the real world check. But a lot of the things that I do and that I help people learn are online masterclasses, online courses that they can go through on their terms, in their own speed, for example. So
Right.
it's a different type of work that I do now. So I need to learn about building personal brand businesses. I need to learn about tech a lot that I hadn't necessarily to learn earlier in my career.
Hmm.
And if you build a new company, you typically don't start with a huge team. So a lot
Right.
of the things that I were lucky enough to outsource to my team in my previous company in Europe, I
Mm-hmm.
now have to do myself. And I enjoy it actually, because it's like understanding how the business operates on a deeper level
Mm-hmm.
by doing it yourself first. I can still outsource those things at a later stage,
Right.
but my team and I, we are currently like 4 people that work very closely together. It's just amazing when you, I would say, go with time, if that makes sense in English. From my first business that I started when I was 20 to now, that's 23 years. Imagine how the world looked like 23 years ago, like from a tech perspective purely, and how you connect with people nowadays.
I'd say from a tech perspective, we didn't really have very much. It was maybe like a Texas Instrument calculator type of
Yeah,
thing, right?
yeah.
Like, there's not like, there wasn't really a lot of sort of technology in business per se, but
I actually bought my first computer 23 years ago.
yeah.
So, and that was an Apple G4, a huge thing. You can kill someone with that beast. It was so heavy.
Yeah,
I could honestly, I couldn't
hard
lift. Yeah.
drive.
The screen was so heavy, I couldn't lift it alone.
Yeah. Well, my dad's an engineer and he built me my first computer. So I had this thing, I came to like university with this big box. Like the hard drive was literally, well, from where they can't see it, the hard drive was like massive and it broke my desk in first year residence. Like
See?
it came off the wall. Like,
Oh my God.
yeah, I was just like, oh my gosh, what is this thing? Thanks so much for sharing that and just also understanding a little bit more about your journey. So, talk to us about the summit that you're putting together. What was the idea behind it? Like, take me back to like when you first came up with this concept, and how is it like evolving to like February 2022?
I have to say that from the first idea to the realization of the summit,
Mhm.
it was not even half a year. So I had, when I started my new business in Canada, I said, okay, I want to build something that is not a business. I want to put myself out there. I want to really combine my personal self, my aspirations
Mhm.
with what I want to do, with the good I want to put into the world with my business. So
Right.
it had to come together for me this time. And since I'm the owner and the founder, there's no better way of doing that. I thought,
Right.
okay, let's do this. But it took me some time to actually understand how I could do it. How
Mhm.
do you build a business that is for profit, but leverage it to make the world a better place? That
Mhm.
first of all, when I said that out loud, it was like, who am I to think that I can make the world a better place? So it was like, do I really want to say that? Do I want to?
Yeah, it's a big proclamation, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's not that I was afraid of failing or anything like that. It was just, who am I to think that I could do that? How dare I? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But then I got more comfortable with the idea, and I mean, this is basically what I do every day. I help my clients build profitable businesses and leverage those businesses to do good beyond money, to help just create a positive impact on the communities they operate in, on society, on their entire ecosystems or the environment as a whole. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Just that's what I do. So why not say it that I do it, and then use my own business in order to achieve that? And since I run in the end a consulting and training company in the strategy world, I said to myself, okay, you're not a medical doctor. You can't help cure diseases. You're not an environmental engineer. You can't really come up with a solution to climate change.
Mhm.
But what you can do is you can bring people together and create awareness, and you can use your voice um, to help people understand how they can use their businesses as a force for good, to do good and do well at the same time. And I started talking about this more, and people came up with the idea, hey, why don't you use your platform? You know so many people.
Mhm.
Use your platform and bring those people together to talk exactly about those things. And that's how the idea of the summit came about. And I reached out to the people in my network and to some people that weren't in my network up until that point, where I said, you would be a very good fit for that summit. That's how I met you.
Yeah,
And in the
absolutely.
end, a lot of people said, no, thank you, maybe
Mhm.
next time.
Right.
And then the right people said, Yeah, totally. I see how I fit in and I want to contribute to that. It's a not-for-profit summit, so I don't make money with that. It's not my business. It's
Right.
something that I just put out there in order to help people understand how they can grow profitable businesses for impact, and at the same time understand what it takes for them as entrepreneurs to be successful over the long run, to play the long game. And from there, it just started to create a ripple, and all of a sudden we had 45 speakers from across the world: Singapore, South Africa,
Wow.
Australia, Europe, North America. And there are so many people, from Harvard professors to Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches to people that have been working as ecopreneurs, or we have Lasse Gustafsson, for example, the CEO of Oceanwise. It's just amazing to see how these people, how the idea of that summit resonated with these people, and where I said, of course, I want to support this, because in the end, I said it's a not-for-profit summit, so it's entirely free to join for everyone,
Right.
but you have a chance to contribute to support the good causes I support in my life through my business, which is helping cure terminal childhood brain cancer on the one hand, and protecting the environment on the other hand. So that's where all the proceeds of the summit actually go to.
Amazing. And so it's going to take place in February.
Yes.
We'll put the sign up link in the show notes for people. It's 3 days. Sessions are recorded, so you could sign up for 3 days, but if you have to pop off or something like that, that's okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's flexible that way. It's virtual. It's just like everything sort of modern day. So you don't have to feel like you're confined to your desk chair for three full days. And like you said, there's a wide breadth of speakers, but you've also organized the days. Day one is focused on what?
Impact
Impact.
creation. Yeah.
Okay, and then day
So
two.
on day one, we talk about impact creation. What does that actually mean? So I invited some entrepreneurs that are building, young entrepreneurs that are building, let's say, the new activist business that
Right.
you can find out there. People that see themselves as forerunners for environmental protection, but don't want to join a not-for-profit company or organization. They really want to build their own business, profitable business, and at the same time help protect the environment. Or people that are like Alexandria, who will join us. She's the founder of Truly Lifestyle brand, a company sitting in the Lower Mainland around Vancouver that is, in a nutshell, it's a skincare company. They create skincare products, beauty products, but they do it differently than the big brands.
Right.
And I talked to her about how did she do it, and how did she come to that point where she said, I want to do cosmetics, but I want to do it in a different way.
Yeah.
And how do you do that? How do you build those businesses? And we talked to, as I said, Lasse Gustafsson of Oceanwise and all these people in the social justice space. How do I build and create DEI friendly workplaces where people have just a space where they feel they belong, not just go to work. So we talk social impact, environmental impact. And then on day two, we talk about creating profitable businesses. What does that mean? What is profit in the first place? So we actually talked to a guy, he's just a legend. He's over 70 years old. He is the founder and honorary chairman of Simon Kucher and Partner, the global leading management consulting company when it comes to pricing. They have more than 40 offices around the world. He was a lecturer and professor at Harvard, INSEAD, Stanford. The guy is a legend. And he talks in normal terms that everyone can understand about the topic of pricing. How do you price your products and services in a smart way?
Right.
Super interesting session for everyone out there running a business. We also talked to Felix Oberholzer of Harvard Business School. He's the leader of the strategy practice there. He had just recently released a book called Simpler, Better Strategy. And he talks about the topic of value creation, because there's a huge difference between pricing and value and profit. So what are these elements? How do they connect? How do I create value with my business is one thing, but how do I capture that value? It's a totally different game. Super interesting. And a ton of other experts that talk to us about building profitable business from various angles. We go down the marketing rabbit hole. We do all kinds of things that are related to building profitable businesses. And then on day 3, we talk basically about us as entrepreneurs,
Mm-hmm.
mental health, physical health, burnout, suicide prevention, all these things that are often just not talked about. Everyone talks about the shiny stuff, being an entrepreneur and how great and glamorous it can be. But let's be honest with ourselves. It's a ton of work, and it's often very, very draining if you do not put boundaries in place to protect your mental and physical health. We talked to Una Duncan, for example, a well-known fitness expert and author of books about nutrition, health. How do you just stay fit as an entrepreneur?
Mm-hmm.
I just bought a treadmill, an under desk treadmill, because I'm sitting on that desk so much. I work so much, but I want to move, just up my game, up my mental energy. We talk about energy systems and all that kinds of things. So it's really, really interesting. And we talk with you about
Yay.
finding your 3 uniques. And it's actually a journey that I started many years ago without even knowing that I'm thinking about my uniqueness in a certain way. So it was really interesting to talk with you about what makes you unique as an entrepreneur, as a person, and how you can use it to put it into practice.
Well, that's a great segue. Like I said, we'll make sure that we get in the show notes links so that people, if they're interested in signing up for the summit, that they can find all the information out. Again, it's happening at the beginning of February. This podcast is going to come out sometime in the next week or so. So hopefully there'll be some people that listen to the podcast
Awesome.
today that sign up immediately. So segue, let's talk a little bit about your 3 uniques. So
Yeah.
first of all, what, like you mentioned that it's already been something that you've done before. It's been there, like sort of on the periphery. What was it like, when I asked you, hey, come on the podcast and share your 3 uniques, like just building that and getting, kind of organized around your thoughts about what you're going to say today. What was that journey like for you?
The first thing there was like, okay, what is it that makes me unique? I've done so much self-exploration over the years as part of my job, just being an executive coach. You do that with others, so you do it for yourself, right? So, and I realized, okay, one of the things that makes me unique is probably what brought me to working in the strategic space in the first place. It's just my innate talent or strength of being strategic. What does that mean? And being very futuristic and thinking often to the detriment of my own career about the future. And when I say that, I made some really hard life decisions about my own career during the past 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
I shifted like twice completely what I do for a living,
Mm-hmm.
because I realized it's not in line of where I want to be later in my life. So, and having that ability to think about the future and being futuristic and being very strategic in what you do, that is certainly one of my unique traits. I have to admit that it's like a double-edged sword. If you think too much about the future, if you're too futuristic, you sometimes lose track to reality, and it prevents you from enjoying the moment.
Yeah.
I had to learn how to balance those 2 things.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a couple of things that I hear about there about, well, first of all, I'll talk about if you spend too much time in a unique, it almost becomes a little bit fantasy like. That's
Yeah.
where, like, when I work with my clients, it's like, well, let's take those 3 uniques and now apply it to your values, your vision that you see for your work, your business, relationships, your health, and we look at all domains of your life, and then we start planning out goals. Because then it becomes a little bit more concrete. You can take the idea of the unique that you've now come up with, but if you don't apply it to all areas of your life, then yeah, it does become a little sometimes fantasy-like or a little bit too nebulous.
Yes.
Or again, it could be misaligned. Like maybe you put 80% of your effort into that unique in your work, but then it doesn't show up in your health, your wealth, your relationships. And so you don't necessarily feel like in balance with it.
Absolutely.
So I think once you can take it from that nebulous, like fantasy like concept and now apply it to areas of your life, then you can actually see it actually playing out. And then also
Yes.
when you make those wrong choices, you can get back in alignment sooner, faster. The other thing that you talked about is you've made 2 significant career changes. Awesome. I want to see people make more career changes. I think we need to get out of the paradigm or the conditioning of like, you go to school, you learn a craft or a trade, and then you work on that for the next 50 years. Really? Like
It's
that's all that's in store for me is just doing the same job over and over again for 50. The fact that you've changed it twice, I'd be like, go for another two more times. Change it four times. Change it five times.
I actually know that this will not be the last business that I run.
Good.
It's impossible for me to. I
Yeah.
mean, the last business was 9 years,
Hmm.
and before that, the career was maybe 5 or 6 years, and I had a whole nother career before that. So no one would know, but I'm originally a trained radio journalist. That's what I designed and hosted radio shows and ran news agencies. This is a completely different skill set and a completely different world that I was in.
Yeah.
And then I studied business administration later on. And then I combined those two into a new job. And then I started running businesses in the strategy space. So I know that there will be something super exciting coming my way in a few years down the road. It will
Hmm.
scare the hell out of me,
Hmm.
but it will be exciting. And I think that's my third unique. One of the three is career shifts are scary and exciting, and I embrace it. It's something that is often coming with, how do I say that? You see it, you want to embrace it, and at the same time, it's so scary that you want to run away from it.
Right.
But then, if you feel that, you know it's the right thing. If it scares the hell out of you, it's the right thing
Hmm.
because it's something that is truly what you want.
Yeah. And I always say to folks too, because sometimes people will, they'll either say it in an expressive way, but they'll go, I'm turning to my gut, or what is my gut telling me, or my intuition telling me. And
Yes.
absolutely, I'm very much about tuning into your intuition and how that, like, how you embody that sensation of like it doesn't feel right, it's kind of feeling icky. But also know that sometimes our intuition is based off of conditioned thinking and values and beliefs that maybe we've inherited from other people. Again, maybe somebody, coached you early on in your education or your career saying you got to do this path and only this path to be successful. And so then when you come across something that's different from that and you rely on your intuition, of course it's going to feel a little painful, a little scary, a little icky. So change the value, the belief that you have about, oh, I can have multiple career changes in my lifespan. And I'm going to embrace change and I'm going to embrace possibility around my career. Now vet that through your intuition.
I think it's even more scary for me to think about having arrived somewhere in life very early in my life. So if I had found my calling at the age of 20, I think I don't know whether I would have been happy about that. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you find your true calling, it's obviously, apparently it's something really great. But
Right.
if you find it that early, I mean, there is this innate curiosity inside me where I say, and what next?
Yeah.
What comes after that? Is that really my true calling? Maybe at that point in time, you never know. But I always admired people that became, I don't know, a teacher, because that's all they wanted from
Mm-hmm.
the very beginning, from the outset. They realized it when they studied that this is their thing. And I was always like, oh my God, how nice must that be? And then on the other hand, I was like, I would be horrified to do that job for 45 years and then maybe drop dead. And that's it then.
Yeah. And all ideas are welcomed. I think that path of, go to school, pick your career, and be in it for 15 years is a bit generational. And I think that we have a lot of opportunity in business, in various industries to educate younger people that you can change. You can, change is good. We know those expressions, create that learning growth mindset, but we need to show them how to do it. So we need to change that conditioning, those paradigms of like, this is the only path for you. So I think it's fabulous that you're taking that on. Okay, so my logistic brain turns on. We've jumped around a little bit. We've talked about your first unique. We've talked about your third unique. What's your second unique?
We actually talked about my second unique, here to
Okay,
help make the
great.
world a better place, but we talked
Great.
about it in the context of the summit.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, it's my third unique, my second unique in that case, is really about understanding that I'm here to make a difference and that I dare to show up every day,
Mm-hmm.
not to make money, but to do the right thing. I strongly believe that if you set out to do the right thing, the business case and the money will just follow. because if it's the right thing, there is a need for it. There's a market for it. There are people that want what you give them.
Mm-hmm.
And then there will be a business case around it. And it's just a question of how long can you stick around and believe in what you do before you run out of money.
Right.
But I think the final spark that I needed was when I attended Professor Henderson's course at Harvard Business School online. They have a course that's called Sustainable Business Strategy,
Mm-hmm.
where she basically puts the idea of putting the right thing first and then turning it into a business,
Mm-hmm.
into practice. And it was an extremely powerful concept. And I mean, it's Harvard Business School, so it's very practical, and they have a lot of business cases and stories and case studies that you work through, and you realize that this is actually something you can do as well.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of great connections stem from that course, where other people as well had that epiphany that they are in it for more than just money, but they need to dare to say it and actually do it.
Well, not having gone through the course, but even just the whole concept of three uniques, before I started the coaching practice that back ends the Three Uniques podcast, I interviewed 100 people to find out what made them unique on my podcast. And then I came up with my coaching experiences, etc., because it became clear to me what people needed, where the gaps were, what people were asking for, what inspired or resonated with people when I put myself out there in that space. So I'm always a big believer. It's like, if you want to, sell a product, etc., you align to that future space. And so my future space hat was on, saying, if everybody in the world knew what their three uniques were and had those aligned in their life, what could we create in the world?
Amen. Amen. Yeah.
Everyone was just showing up in their full, uniquely expressed self every single day, right? Out there to live their purpose every single day and be in service and do good, no harm, that type of thing. What would we create?
Wouldn't that be great?
It's so endless. It's like, it's like one big goosebump. And so I had to put myself in that space and then go, okay, let's just play in that space. See what that feels like. I think you're going to get so many learnings from hosting the summit, which you already probably are experiencing, but then actually when it goes live and all the chatter on social media and chat rooms and all this sort of stuff that you've got set up, you're going to see something. And in there's going to be a product, an offering, a price, a client base that will generate.
I agree. I think if you start talking about the things you're truly passionate about, you just draw the right people towards you.
Totally.
You don't need to work with tens of thousands of people to create an impact. You need to work with the right handful of people to create that ripple effect. And I totally agree with you, Brenda. Those people will gravitate towards, I don't say me because it's not just me, they will gravitate towards the idea of that we put out there in the world, and it'll work. It'll work out. I trust the process.
Awesome. How has a failure set you up for success?
Which one? Oh my goodness.
I love it. I love the fact that you've got a catalog. Let's go.
Hey.
We're going to hear one.
Where do I put? I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made in my life was to think that I know, and therefore to stop listening and asking questions. Mm-hmm. And the fact that I became a coach, during my education as a coach, I rediscovered my curiosity that I had lost during my years in the corporate world, mm-hmm. where not the best ideas win, where often the loudest, the one that talks the loudest wins. Mm-hmm. And as a journalist, of course, I was trained to ask proper questions. Yeah. But I lost that in the process. And I think that was a big mistake in my life, that I let go of that intuition and stopped asking questions because it was maybe politically not the smartest thing to do. Mm-hmm. That was a huge mistake because I felt miserable after a while in big corporations. So it set me up for success because I started to rediscover that innate curiosity, and that led me to where I am today.
Fabulous, which ties back into your three uniques.
Absolutely.
What's one of the most worthwhile investments you've made in the last 3 years?
Financially speaking,
It could be, or just investments in yourself. It could be product, service. Yeah, something that you've invested in. I know that we sometimes go to currency or something from
yeah,
that standpoint, but
I
you
think in that context, something that I learned at when I'm maybe 22, 23 years old,
Mhm.
I really wanted to have a very particular job as a journalist. But my boss didn't want to give that job to me because he felt I was not educated enough, like academically educated enough.
Mhm.
Um, so I realized that I might have a job that I love, but there will always be those glass ceilings that I will hit. So I decided to go back to university and actually study. I studied business administration, incredibly boring. But the point is, at that point in time, I realized that the next 40, 50 years, I don't want to feel the way I felt at that moment when I hit that glass ceiling
Mhm.
and somebody told me, you probably could do this, but I can't put you out there. You don't have the credibility.
Mm.
And that stung, that hurt. Um,
Yeah.
so I stopped working, I stopped earning money and go back to school,
Mhm.
go back to university and put in those years. And I think this was definitely the best investment I've ever made in my life. Not because I came out on the other end so super smart, but because I realized that having studied business administration opened so many interesting doors for me all of a sudden that I could just walk through and experience whether the room on the other end of that door is interesting for me. And if not, I'm not bound to it. I can just go into another room. So from that perspective, I think everyone knows that investing in yourself is probably the best investment.
Mhm.
But actually having gone through it, because I was down a road where this nearly ended my career,
Right.
um, I truly know that it's the case. I was only 28 when I started my academic education, so it changed my life forever.
So knowing that now about yourself, that when you invest in yourself, it like exponentially grows. Like you can see that compound value of it. But it took you a while, like it took you that journey, right, to get to sort of that, dark space where then it's like, okay, this is my best option at this point. What has it taught you now? Like, is there anything that sort of shifted for you and you're thinking about continual investment in yourself as a result of going through that experience?
I promised myself many years ago, I think it was 7 or 8 years, maybe even
Mhm.
more, that I would intentionally pick a new skill or a topic and learn it and educate myself. And I'm not talking about playing the ukulele or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about something that is related to my growth as a human being, as an individual. And
Right.
sometimes that's closely related also to my job, to my business. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's totally off. It has nothing to do with it, but
Mhm.
it helps me grow as a person, as a father, as a human being. Um, when I came to Canada, for example, I was totally dumbfounded by, and then everyone outside of Canada won't understand it, but you will. I was I was shocked by how Canada treated their heritage, the natives, the First Nations,
Mhm.
and I couldn't believe it because it's nothing that this country ever talks about, and they're honestly speaking great marketing.
Mm.
If you live somewhere else in the world, Canada is the place to be. Let's
Yeah.
be frank, it is the place to be. It's an awesome country to live and to raise children,
Mhm.
but it has a dark history, but no one ever talks about it. When I came here and I found out about it, it was like, not again. I've been there. I'm German. You
Right.
know what I mean? We have an extremely dark history,
Mhm.
but we've done our homework. And I couldn't believe how many people just close their eyes and don't want to hear about that Canadian history.
Mhm.
So I started to educate myself around it. And
Right.
it's not a nice journey to be
No.
in, but it's part of who we are as a country.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's just what you need to do. And sometimes it's something you learn something that is related to your job. And sometimes it's something to educate yourself to become a more valuable member of society.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, anytime I think you're going through what you're saying is like a reconciliation journey, right? I'm reconciling with myself on my purpose, my values. And yes, I'm, uh, a new person living in Canada with this history. And I come from a country, like when I'm hearing you from you saying about their history, and it's like, I'm just going to reconcile all of it and still be true to myself and know what's right. And know what's, and how I'm going to go forward to, make sure that the values, the purpose that I have is out there in the business that you're creating, the people that you're serving. It's like, now you're just, okay, I'm bringing this new information, this new insight, and it's shaping, and yeah, and I'm resetting, and I'm putting my purpose out there even more so. And I think even just us having this conversation, people don't like to have these type of conversations because it makes people feel bad. It's like, oh, I don't know if I want to say this because I'm going to feel bad, and then I'm going to make other people feel bad. And it's like, we need to actually talk about it more. That's part of reconciling the past, is talking about it in the context of how we want to make it better in the future, and make it more digestible. And so that even younger people aren't afraid to learn it. And that's how we change that generational belief about it. So, yeah, I've had to reconcile that myself too. It's like, oh, having grown up in Canada all my life and not knowing that, and even being told not to learn about it, it's a waste of time.
We
And
can we
it's like,
can decide whether
yeah.
we would like to continue to cover things up, or whether we would like to leaning in and reaching out and being an advocate for doing it differently. It's not about finger pointing and about saying you did wrong in the past. It's
Yeah.
about deciding what we want to do to make it differently in the future. I'm not saying better, because you can't do something that happened better in the future. It is done, it's past. But
Mm-hmm.
we can play a different role, how we raise our kids, how we create inclusive workspaces, how we create society that is inclusive, and how we just accept that things happen in the past. They always happen in the context of their time.
Mm-hmm.
It's there's no good at finger pointing and saying you did wrong. We know, and they
Yeah.
know. There is no good at just rubbing it in. But we can be true to ourselves as human beings and say, if that's not what we want, what is it that we want, and build towards it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Uh, Alex, I have one last question for you.
Go
Uh,
ahead.
this is my question. I take it from Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. So he talks about. Well, I'll just ask you the question. Enough context behind it. So, if I was to give you a billboard, and it could be anywhere in the world, where would it be, and what would you put on the billboard?
Even if I am putting myself out there to make the world a better place, I'm not saying I put it in front of Coca-Cola and stop saying and say stop polluting the oceans with your darn plastic. That
Right.
would be pathetic. I mean, I don't know where how I would use it, but I think I would put it in front of my mother's house in Germany to remind her that I'm always there, even if I'm not, and tell her that I love her.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. What a good son.
Yeah, I just miss my family. It's
Yeah.
when you live on the other end of the planet, um, you need to find new ways of connecting. And thank God we are now living in a time where um, communication is so easy. You just take your phone, you open
Hmm.
WhatsApp or any other messenger, and you just video call someone without paying for it. Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Like when I remember back when I was um, studying in Uruguay. I did a semester in Uruguay. It was 2007, and Skype was still very, very new back then.
Hmm.
No one would know how to use it properly, and it was a nightmare
I know.
to talk to my parents, because they were actually very, very young, but they were like never using computers or modern technology because they didn't need to.
Hmm.
It was necessary for their jobs, and
Yeah.
family was always around. And then their weird son goes to Uruguay, and talking to my parents all of a sudden became such an ordeal, and it was so difficult. But now I can just pick up the phone and call my family. This is so amazing.
Yeah, it's great. And you and I can connect and we can do a podcast together. So,
See?
so easy. Alex, it's been great having you on, hearing about your three uniques today and hearing about this amazing leadership summit that you are building and putting out in the world and assembling all these great speakers. Uh, where can people find you and learn more about you?
I think the easiest way is to go to the website, alexthestrategist.com. It's kind of a crutch because my surname is so difficult. I made the stupid decision to buy the domain brueckmann.ca that no one can pronounce. So hey, just go to alexthestrategist.com. It forwards to my website. You'll find everything about the summit there and a ton of free resources that you can use to build a business.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And for everyone tuning in today, remember, get out there and share your three uniques. There's 7.7 billion people on this planet. Someone needs what you've got. Take care, Alex.
Thanks, Brenda.